Well, you might know him from hit TV shows such as Frasier, Beverly Hills 90210, or Dharma and Greg, or maybe you know him as a Hall of Fame quarterback in both pro and college. He's Steve Young. Steve, how are you, man?
I've never been introduced that way. That was only my mother knows that I was on those shows. So,
or Steve, or I could bring up the fact that I know you went to Greenwich High School a few years after Matt Lauer and a few years before Trey Wingo. You guys run in the same circles?
Look at you.
It's called show prep, Steve.
I'm learning more about myself every day. I have forgotten about those shows, but it is true. I was a cameo in all those shows. That's a great one.
Hey, Steve, we're down here in South Louisiana, and a lot of people are pretty fired up after back-to-back big performances by the Saints. Are you buying that they've turned it around?
No, I don't buy anybody anymore. I thought I was buying the Cowboys for a little while. I'd given up on the Patriots. I thought the Broncos would run the table. I thought Seattle was going to be indestructible. I believe that the 49ers were going to be back in control. You know, it's just the league today. I was talking to friends last night, just trying to figure out what is it about this league, and really it's a game plan matchup league. If you match up pretty well against somebody, if you have a good game plan, you have a shot. And with Miami beating San Diego 37-0. So I think the Saints are obviously you're playing better when you win, no question. I think this week's a big deal. They get the 49ers. I think both teams are kind of in that, kind of desperate situation where they want to prove that they're really a high-end, high-octane team. And I think unfortunately, the preseason lasts until about now. And now we really find out what teams are made of in the last couple of months.
Well, Drew Brees is 35, Steve, and everyone knows famously at your time in San Francisco, there was you and Joe Montana and the transition. And a lot of people here wonder, at 35 years old, how much longer can Drew Brees go? When you watch him, what do you see? How close is he to the Saints needing to start thinking about their future?
Well, the Saints are going to do it inevitably. They just can't help it because people are paid to make those kind of decisions. They have a lot of time in between decision-making every April, and so they're going to do something. It doesn't matter, and age gets you in the NFL. Like I said, perceptionally, you're already talking about it, and so he's kind of dead already just because you talk about it over and over and over. I just feel like when you have a guy like Drew Brees, you got these once-in-a-generation, once-in-two-generation quarterbacks, and a few teams have them. 5 guys in the world that can do what he does. I'm of the mindset of just making his life as palatable and wonderful and protected as possible, and writing it all the way to the end with no solution otherwise. No backup plan, no anything. Just make sure it's all about him, and then in the long run, the next person's going to have his struggles. You're not going to be as good, and that way you just get the most out of Drew Brees, right? Why do people try to push people? Even a couple, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago with Tom Brady, people are like, well, we need to get rid of him. It's like you get to a certain age, and you start talking about this kind of stuff. So I think it's a big mistake. I think the Saints and the fans of the Saints should change the tune that usually goes on with older quarterbacks. Just don't talk about it. If anyone wants to bring up the subject, we refuse to talk about it. Drew Brees is our quarterback until he falls over.
There's a moratorium on this show now. No one can talk about replacing Drew Brees, and that's a verdict coming from Steve Young. Steve's with us. I got to ask a thought on Saints and Niners this week. It's so apropos to have you on. People down here love that game, even though the Saints rarely ever came out on top. Do you miss that game, that rivalry feel? I mean, it always seemed to go your guys' way.
It was a great rivalry, and you're right. I think offensively, the Saints never quite could score enough points. I mean, we always had the advantage there. But defensively, my memory of playing the Saints, I almost get a twitch in my face when I think about going down to New Orleans and playing. I mean, with Vaughn Johnson and Pat Swilling and Ricky Jackson, I mean, it was brutal. Yeah. The fans, I mean, I honestly, the biggest struggles we had offensively was always in New Orleans. But somehow you're right, we actually did win a lot of those games. But man, I think I left some flesh down there. There's no question.
Steve Young, this is fun, man. Thanks so much for taking the time.
That was the best intro ever. That was awesome.
My pleasure, Steve. Have a great day.
Thanks, buddy.